Right, now I wanted to talk to you about some of the trans activism, for want of another word. You've talked about it a bit in the sporting world. You've been very active on some of the issues this throws up, especially for women's sport. And we've had some fascinating comments from a Victorian politician. She's actually a parliamentary secretary, Harriet Shing, parliamentary secretary for equality in Victoria in the Daniel Andrews government. She says she thinks it's really important to use inclusive language. We do have people who are able to have babies who identify as male. So she's agreeing with British rules and British guidelines that suggest we shouldn't talk about a pregnant woman because somehow this alienates trans people who might be able to have babies. This is nutty, isn't it?
Oh, I absolutely think it's nutty, Chris. I think that this parliamentarian is saying that we need to be inclusive, but the language that she suggested I personally find incredibly insulting, and I think a lot of Australian women do, in situations where apparently we're no longer allowed to use words like mum and dad. We should talk about gestational parent, and we're not allowed to talk about breastfeeding. Instead, we have to talk about chest feeding. I mean, this is just madness and undermines fundamentally what it means to be a woman.
Yeah, it just worries me greatly, and you know, as if this is somehow targeting trans people. I mean, I couldn't be more willing to be accepting of trans people. In fact, I helped Catherine McGregor come to this station. She now has her own show tomorrow night to 8:30. Don't miss it. But the point here is that somehow by referring to mums, dads, parents in those terms, grandmothers, pregnant women, how can that possibly be alienating to other people? And what worries me is what this might do to us, because we all know language controls thought and vice versa. Are you worried that we're almost trying to get rid of sex and gender from our social experience?
Oh, it does worry me, Chris, because you make a really important point. Words matter. And as a parliamentarian passing laws in Australia's federal parliament, I know how much words matter, because words give certainty to our laws and they give certainty to our policies. But you only have to look at what has happened to the whole concept of what it means to be a woman. And you referenced my advocacy around women's sport. This is really where we see the rubber hitting the road on this issue. I mean, our peak national sporting body, Sport Australia, can't tell me what a woman is and think that men who identify as women should be allowed into women's sports. So it is just utter madness. Words matter, and we need to remember that when we're creating policies and creating laws for the Australian people.
So how do we push back against this? We know that universities get very active on this and they push this sort of agenda, and therefore students accept it, and then it floats its way into the education system. And here's a parliamentary secretary for equality, effectively someone in a position of governmental authority, encouraging Victorians not to refer to pregnant women.
It is absolutely crazy, Chris, and since I've started talking about these issues publicly, particularly on your show and others on this channel, and also in the nation's parliament as well, I get emails week after week after week from fellow Australians who are all concerned about this, and they're saying to me that they're scared to speak out about this, because this is the other element to this entire debate, that we are deplatforming and cancelling people that put forward another point of view. You only have to look at what happened to J.K. Rowling on Twitter to see what happens when you try and speak out against this minority activist orthodoxy. So people are concerned to speak out, but I'm certainly buoyed by the support I've received for my advocacy.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. I appreciate your clarity. Thanks for joining us again, Claire.
Thanks for having me, Chris.